The best knight in the north overhears his attacker's name and is certain that he knows this person very well. Sadly, the image he has of him is one of an uncontrollable swordmaster stuck in his room, a man out of his mind if you may. He sees the perpetrator as none other than Count Perdium's useless oldest son, Ghislaine Perdium. As he bleeds out from every orifice in his upper body, the knight refuses to believe that such a garbage human being is responsible for his defeat. He's blind with rage with no strength to show for it, and while he stays struggling, Ghislaine mocks him about how warm and cozy his trap of fire is. Apparently, our MC had spent a lot of money setting up this trap and is besides himself that it worked so well. Coated head to toe in metal armor, he cradles his long axe on his shoulder and approaches his latest victim, only to ask him if he likes the trap. The knight's rage can only increase, so he yells at our hero in a bid to confirm if he's really Ghislaine. Worse off, he still refuses to believe that our hero knew of his plans beforehand. Not only that, but our boy looks down on the now helpless knight as he explains that he also knew about the number of men he had, the spies he had sent out, and even those who helped him with reinforcements. The moment he relays that he knew it all from the start, the knight begins to feel like a puppet in the hand of Ghislaine, being helpless about the choices of his own life. He refuses to give up his delusion of control, so, in a bid to reassure himself, he declares that he has always been a hidden ace card. The knight then yells in a crazed manner, cursing our hero and wanting to know how a useless person like him could get the one-up on him. Before he can finish his sentence, our MC kicks him square in the face, sending him falling as he tells the knight to shut up. Peeling off his headgear, Ghislaine urges his latest victim to try invading as many times as he wants, but makes it clear that he'll still win the war time after time. He goes on to rhetorically ask the knight if he knows why that is, and doesn't wait for a response before telling him that it's because he has all the plans. An arrogant smirk accompanies his declaration, and with good reason. The time is a year ago at the Lithuania Kingdom, near the Perdium estate, and something strange happens. The camp is filled with battle tents and armored knights, and in one of these tents, our hero wakes up in a frenzy, breathing heavily and staring at his features as he asks himself what happened. He instantly reaches for his neck, sweating buckets as he wonders how he's still alive, and he shakes away the thought, seeing as such a thing shouldn't be possible when he just got killed a while ago. You see, Ghislaine was involved in an X-battle where he got beat up beyond recognition and even had his blade smacked away from his embrace. The sword dug its way into the ground a few ways from him and he cursed under his breath as he bled out. Unfortunately, his opponent was none other than Aiden, a noble knight ranking among the continent's top 7. Aiden wasn't satisfied with the damage he had dealt our hero, so he slashed him across the chest for good measure, taunting him as he went down. Towering over our hero, the noble knight went on about how Ghislaine, who was both the mercenary king and one of the continent's 7 strongest men, would be meeting his end. He then flashed a self-absorbed smile as he declared that the war was over. After this, he asked if his victim had any last words, but our hero declared that his only regret was not having a chance to fulfill his revenge. With his face all bloodied up, he yelled at Aiden, calling him a sickening bastard and asking him to die. In response, the noble knight scoffed and called our hero an arrogant person, going on about how he never expected him to be the oldest son of the Perdium household. Still stretching his blade, Aiden accused our hero of leaving his family after his sister's death, and Ghislaine fell quiet for lack of words. Moments later, he asked how the noble knight knew about it, seeing as he was meant to be from another kingdom. Throwing his hand into the air, Aiden declared that there was no way he wouldn't know, especially because he had spent all that energy tracking down our hero. A devious smile crept up on his lips at this point and he revealed that he was part of the crew that helped the Delphine household to bring down Ghislaine's family. Our hero's eyes shot open upon hearing this, with the fact that there were multiple people involved sticking out to him like a sore thumb. In his mind, it was only Duke Delphine's doing, so this revelation hit him where he wasn't prepared for. Trembling with rage, Aiden pointed out that there was no use dragging things out since Ghislaine was going to die anyway. With this, he placed his blade by our hero's neck and told him to simply accept his fate. Too weak to even fight back, our MC used the last of his strength to scream, calling Aiden a bastard and telling him that he will never forgive him. In turn, the noble knight only smirked and accepted his malicious intent. All of this was just moments before he slit our hero's throat with so much force that it took his head along with it, spraying his blood all over the battlefield. Back to the present, and this memory is still very vivid for Ghislaine, so much so that he locates a barrel of water and keeps looking at his neck to confirm that it's still holding up his head. He's left wondering if he hallucinated the entire series of events, and the fact that he looked like his younger self isn't helping matters at all. Caution falls upon our boy at this point, and he begins to look left to right as he welcomes the possibility that he might have been taken captive and used as a lab rat for mages. This makes him promise himself that if it's his reality, he'll make said mages regret keeping him alive. Just then, his thoughts get interrupted by one of his soldiers named Ricardo, who refers to him as young master. In response, Ghislaine steals a glance at the entrance of his tent, and cautiously watches as Ricardo makes his way inside. Apparently, all the soldier wanted to do was to get him outside, seeing as he was certain that his master had come awake. Unfortunately, our hero is too suspicious to take it at face value, so he creeps up on Ricardo and places a blade by his throat, signaling him to be quiet. Up next, he tells the soldier that he'll let him live, only if he answers his questions, and delays before adding that he might not let him live after all. This instills the fear of God into Ricardo, and it takes everything in him to call out to his master under such a situation. He then exhales loudly as he announces that Ghislaine is crossing the line, adding that a no is a no. Confused, our hero flinches and wonders why the soldier suddenly switched to a more relaxed outlook when he's currently being threatened. For this reason, he asks Ricardo to explain what he's talking about. The soldier wastes no time wiggling free from our hero's grip and laments about how Ghislaine fell asleep from tiring himself out. Apparently, he threw a tantrum earlier that day, and this news surprises our MC so much that he tries to confirm if he really did that. In response, Ricardo rubs on his throat as he wonders if his master forgot everything after taking a nap. He then explains that our boy had thrown a tantrum about how he wanted to command the group to raid the orcs. Ghislaine's eyebrows meet in confusion as he repeats the orc situation as a question, followed shortly by the fact that he threw a tantrum. He calls all of it nonsense, refusing to believe a word Ricardo said. In turn, the soldier simply squats to get his master's bag and tells him to grab his stuff because people are waiting on him. Still trying to regain his bearings, our hero asks where they're headed, only to get told that they are obviously going to the Perdium estate. Ricardo brushes past him as he says this, only for Ghislaine to grab him by the shoulder and tell him to repeat his last statement. The soldier begs the pardon of his master, but our hero can only wonder if his subordinate is referring to the fallen Perdium estate. Like Thomas only believed Jesus' return after seeing the holes in his palms, Ghislaine had to see the estate for himself to believe it was still standing. He made his way to the edge of the nearest hill and looked into the distance to see his beloved estate still in one piece. This raises more questions for him, seeing as he witnessed this same estate being reduced to ashes. Just then, Ricardo comes whispering into his master's ear, wanting to know if he perhaps had a terrible nightmare. He found it quite weird that he called his own household a fallen one, so he warns his master that such a statement could get him kicked out if the Count heard it. Galcian proceeds to pinch his cheeks, seeing as dreaming could be the last remaining reason for the way things have been going. Unfortunately, nothing changes after the pinch except Ricardo's expression. It's at this point that our hero begins to connect the dots. A younger face, with his household still standing, could only mean one thing: he had traveled back in time. You see, the younger Ghislaine had hated his household, and the immaturity born from feeling inferior led him to cause trouble such as throwing incessant tantrums. The more time passed without him repenting, the more people from the household avoided him. It got so bad that he ran away from home, no longer able to withstand the criticism. Several years after that, our boy grew to become a mercenary, and a darn good one at that. He survived countless battles, built up his skill, and made a name for himself by piling up the bodies of countless enemies. He later returned to the Perdium estate in a bid to make up for his past mistakes, only to find that the entire household had already been crushed to dust. Our hero had lost everything. So, you can understand how our hero feels now, seeing as all he thought he had lost is simply staring back at him. All the people he holds dear being very much alive earns him a moment to let it all sink in, and afterwards, he begins to laugh, thinking to himself that he could sing a song of joy at that moment. While Ricardo shoots him questioning looks, it dawns on Ghislaine that it's much too soon to rejoice. He stares at his soldier and begins an internal dialogue about how he had mentioned an orc raid. He then recalls the first time he stubbornly led the raid. No matter how he looked at it, it was a bad day. Most of his soldiers lost their lives because he had followed the raid squad in a bid to make a name for himself. At that time, the report had stated that there were only 3 orcs at the camp, so Ghislaine thought it would be easy enough for someone like him to command the mission. Mind you, he had absolutely no experience at the time. Sadly, upon arrival at the camp, they were met with over 20 orcs, and almost all of them ended up dying just because our hero had stubbornly wanted to command the squad. Things are different now that he has all the experience he needs, so Ghislaine gets to arming himself, keeping in mind that the raid should be easy enough since the orcs didn't really have a strategy back then. The only problem he's now faced with is whether or not the soldiers will trust him, seeing as they still perceive him to be some useless bastard. Out of the blue, a vantage hut gets flung right above our hero's head and he freezes in place, just to watch it crumble in horror. To realize his biggest fear, one of the soldiers yells that they're being attacked by the orcs, and before he can repeat the warning a second time, the monsters begin to wreak havoc on their camp, charging in with crude weapons of all kinds. Ghislaine turns to check things out for himself, but he's surprised by how soon they got attacked. The way he remembers things, the orcs didn't arrive this quickly in his past life. Unfortunately, none of this matters in the grand scheme of things, seeing as the orcs have already begun killing off the soldiers quite brutally. Some of them get smashed into walls and the others get crushed underneath the weight of their opponent's mighty weapons. At this point, the raid squad commander shows no fear and responds by yelling at his remaining men to get into formation. Commander Skaven then follows up by telling them not to panic and runs headfirst into danger as he reiterates that they should get into the defense formation. Sadly, his bravado is met with the overwhelming strength of the orcs as one of them takes out 3 soldiers with one swipe of his axe, pushing back the commander while he's at it. This leaves Skaven sweating profusely and thinking to himself that they let their guard down. He's vexed that they got attacked when they weren't prepared at all, not to mention the fact that there are more orcs than was reported. For these reasons, the commander concludes that they're all probably going to die. Just then, someone calls out to him from behind and he looks at the person via the side of his eye. Apparently, they just wanted to warn him of the orc who has now lifted his axe behind him in preparation to attack. With not enough time to counter, the commander is basically a sitting duck on the battlefield. Luckily, our hero springs into action, grabs Skaven by the shoulder, and practically throws him out of harm's way as he makes a beeline for the orc. This surprises the commander so much that he keeps staring back at Ghislaine, and watches as our MC steadies himself in the face of this monster, only to swing his blade at the same moment it seeks to attack. This results in him cutting off the orc's fingers, and while they're sent flying into the air, it becomes impossible for the beast to continue wielding his weapon. Commander Skaven cannot believe his eyes and neither can the other soldiers, seeing as their jaws are left open from the surprise. Anyway, Ghislaine goes on to cut off the leg of the orc, throwing off balance and making it fall on its back in defeat. After this, our hero simply spins his sword playfully, lamenting about not being able to use Umana and wishing he had returned to the past earlier. He then walks up to Skaven while he's still seated on the ground and asks if he's the commander. The man does nothing but refer to our hero as the young master. This doesn't stop Ghislaine from stretching out his hand and asking him to hand something over. Skaven begs his pardon from lack of understanding, so our hero reiterates that he should hand over his commander rights to him. Ghislaine's request comes across as unreasonable to Skaven, but he stays quiet to mull it over. He wonders why our hero would choose now of all times to ask for the right to command, a time when the lives of all their soldiers are on the line. He just can't let such a thing happen, so he gets on his feet and refuses our hero's request. When our boy asks what he means by that, the commander goes on about how he can't give up the authority that the Lord gave him that easily, even if Ghislaine is the young master. In turn, our hero glares at this man as he walks away and admits to himself that the situation is pretty annoying. He also admits that he would have reacted the same if he were in Skaven's shoes and some idiot came by to request the right to command. Just then, his thoughts get interrupted by another orc hoping to catch him by surprise. It doesn't work. Orse off. Skaven tells our hero to stand back, adding that he'll take care of things because he's still too inexperienced to lead their troops. Ghislaine can't bring himself to stop frowning after hearing this, so he decides to prove himself. He does this by gathering just enough momentum and throwing his blade with it, much to the surprise of Skaven who wanted to attack the beast. Instead of focusing on the monster, he went for our hero's shirt, tugging at it violently as he asks him what he thinks he's doing. Mere seconds later, the scolding instantly stops and is replaced with complete awe. Skaven slowly takes a look at the incoming monster, only to realize that our hero's blade is stuck right between its eyes. The beast roars in pain up until it falls on its back and the commander keeps looking at it in disbelief. He's left wondering how Ghislaine managed to hit the orco's weak spot. Our hero then calls out to him and asks if he knows what the most important thing in battle is, only for the commander to stay quiet. At the same time, the other soldiers are busy cowering in fear as the orcs roar at them. Our hero then uses this as a prime example, stating that there's no hope in winning a battle when their troops are filled with fear. A sly smile then comes to his lips and he declares that they need to gain momentum. Without wasting any more time, Ghislaine heads into the heat of battle, peeling his sword out of the orco's head in one swift move and leaping into the air in a bid to attack another. Just as planned, he lands right on top of the next monster and sinks his blade through its skull for all his men to witness. Even Skaven cannot come to terms with this instant improvement, so he just watches as our hero dares the remaining orcs to come at him. He then raises his bloodied blade into the air and screams that he'll kill all of them as he steps on the head of his latest victim. As he launches himself towards the orcs, they return the favor by charging towards him in their numbers. Unfortunately, they have no idea that Ghislaine is in the business of doing away with limbs. They get enlightened the moment our hero begins to cut off their legs and hands, leaving Skaven to ask himself if he's dreaming. The commander is still in shock after all this time, seeing as orc heads just keep coming off their bodies courtesy of our hero. The commander analyzes the situation and admits that it's hard for him to do anything even as a mana user, but his skinny master is busy working wonders without it. It's obvious from the heavy breaths that our hero is already worn out, but this doesn't stop him from battling the enemy. Skaven notices how our boy uses the littlest movements to escape attacks, and the sharpest swordsmanship to deal blows to the weak points of the orcs. In his eyes, Ghislaine is like a monolith swordmaster or even something greater. Cold sweat drips down the exposed flesh of the commander as he beholds the X that is his young master. On the other hand, our hero goads the orcs, asking them if they've given him all that they've got and claiming that he hasn't even gotten warmed up. As though they aren't mad enough already, he insults their entire race as he tells them that they're not living up to their name as a warrior species. This warrants a chase from the orcs, only, this time, our hero doesn't stand and fight. Some of the other soldiers are quite confused, with one of them pointing out that the orcs are all charging towards Ghislaine, and the other asking if he's running away. For clarity's sake, they simultaneously call out to Skaven, who has had his back turned for most of the battle. They have no idea that he also doesn't know what the hell our hero is thinking. He then takes a moment to analyze his previous actions, from how he ran into the group of orcs to draw their attention, to how he's now running away in the opposite direction. At this point, he realizes that our boy is heading towards a cliff, and it all comes together rather slowly. He struggles to believe Ghislaine's plan, but his eyes shoot open from grabbing the entire concept, and for this reason, he turns to face his men, yelling at them to raise a shield wall. The commander's expression then takes a more serious outlook as he makes it clear that they'll follow the first son of Perdium. Meanwhile, said first son is still being chased down by orcs, but he acknowledges that Skaven must have realized his plans if he really is a skilled commander. Upon reaching the edge of the cliff, Ghislaine makes a U-turn and begins to hold off his attackers. Although he would like to slice them all down himself, his younger body lacks the stamina to pull it off. A smile still creeps onto his lips, seeing he was done preparing the stage for Skaven. The orcs soon realize that they're boxed in, but by the time they turn around to counter, the commander and his men are already charging towards them with shields and spears. Our hero quips that everything is perfect and proceeds to jump off the cliff first. With this, Skaven gives the command and tells all his men to join him in pushing the orcs off the cliff. Right on cue, they slam into the enemy with their long shields and use their spears to stab the ones that refuse to yield. The squad continues to let out battle cries as they use all of their strength to counter these beasts, and finally, they push them all off the cliff, sending them falling to their deaths. As the orcs slam against the bottom of the hill, the men breathe heavily and acknowledge that they managed to kill off their enemies. This doesn't concern Skaven, seeing as he's more worried about the young master. He leans over the edge of the cliff as he frantically calls out to our hero, only to discover that Ghislaine had dug his blade into the wall of the cliff, and is now holding onto it. The commander cracks a smile and our hero returns the gesture. With this, Skaven reaches out to him, asking that he take his arm. Unfortunately, this is beyond our boy's capabilities, and soon enough, his hand slips from the hilt of his blade. Skaven watches in horror as our hero falls to the base of the cliff and calls out to him with everything he's got. Much later, Ghislaine begins to see visions of Alina, his little sister, as she calls him her big brother. The moment he realizes she's the one, the visions take a different turn as they become memories of his time with her. He remembers when she cried for their mother, thanked him for his help, and even when she accused him of acting differently. While he's still trying to make sense of this vision, Alina suddenly appears and grabs hold of his hand, bugging him to go with her. It's at this point that our hero opens his eyes, and after taking a moment to regain himself, he acknowledges that he's still alive, adding that they managed to save him. Grabbing the cloth on his forehead, he asks himself if he was just dreaming, only to be struck with intense pain upon his first attempt to sit up. He then grips his sides as he admits that his entire body hurts, speculating that it must be as a result of pushing it to the limit. Our hero only gains solace in the fact that he's still alive. Just then, the door to his room comes open, and a maid calls out to him, excitedly pointing out that he's awake. A quick glance at her and he refers to her as Belinda with this look of bewilderment on his face. In turn, the maid goes on about how worried she was and how she warned him to leave the orcs to the soldiers. Before she can finish her sentence, Ghislaine rushes to embrace her, refusing to let go as she wonders if she did something wrong. In response, our hero quips that he's just glad to see her. Apparently, Belinda was his personal tutor, and ever since he was little, she was the only one who stayed by his side despite his idiotic antics. Unfortunately, our MC never got to see her after his family fell to ruin and never thought he'd get the chance to even see her again. As Ghislaine continues to hug her, Belinda wonders what he's so happy about when they see each other every day. He then makes up his mind to tell her the truth and grabs her by both her shoulders as he asks her to listen to him. Our hero goes on to reveal that a great catastrophe will soon strike Perdium, but she doesn't understand what he's saying. This makes him admit that he died and came back to life, but the maid just patronizes him as she points out that she's sure he almost died by the hands of the orcs. He's quick to clarify that he didn't mean it that way, but Belinda just goes about laying his bed and tells him that he's the one in danger, not Perdium. She then mounts both hands on her hips and scolds the living daylight out of our hero, leaving no choice but to acknowledge that she doesn't believe him. In turn, the maid asks him what he would have done if he got too hurt to even attend the festival. The mention of the festival comes as a jolt to him, so Belinda wonders if he has forgotten about it. She then reminds him that his little sister has been waiting for the chance to go to the festival with him, adding that it would be a great chance for both of them to become close again. Ghislaine picks up a photo of him and his sister as he recalls that there was in fact a festival that always took place around this time of year. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to enjoy it in his past life due to his traumatic experience. Now, he just wants to know how long he has until the festival, so his maid does the math and tells him that he has a week. Our hero can only view this as a week until the day that changed his life. His sister had made her way to his room that day and the memory continues to haunt him, the same memory of his sister bugging him to follow her to the festival. The reason is because this festival is where she dies. Apparently, Alina has only a week to live. The moment Alina steps into his room, he pulls her in for a hug, just like he did Belinda, who's now so surprised that her eyes shot open. As for Alina, the girl gets weirded out immediately, so she asks what's wrong with Big Brother, wanting to know if this is some sort of prank. In turn, our hero quips that he misses her, but this just makes things worse. Alina instantly yells that he's creeping her out and pushes him away with so much force that the maid has to catch him. Ghislaine begins to cough, tapping his chest as he admits that his sister may be too strong for a child and wonders if she had always been this way. In turn, Alina wipes her brother off of her, making it clear that she only came because Belinda asked her to. She then asks the hero if he thinks her presence makes everything okay. Unfortunately, he's oblivious to her point, so he asks what she's talking about. Apparently, he had called her annoying, told her to piss off, and even yelled that feeling her breath on him is disgusting. Alina wastes no time reminding him about this, and scrounges her face to show how annoyed she is that he forgot all of it. Ghislaine refuses to believe that he said such things. Then it dawns on him that he wasn't really close with his sister in his past life. For this reason, he tells her that he's sorry, surprising her and Belinda alike. The latter wonders why he apologized first, and his sister asks if an orc hit his head, adding that she heard about the monsters giving him a hard time. This is what gets our hero mad, so he begins to defend himself, claiming that he really defeated all the orcs. He goes on to ask his sister why she keeps implying that he got hit, only for his body to remind him of how hurt it is. He drops to his knees in no time and curls up from the pain, leaving Alina to mock him about totally defeating the orcs. She wastes no time reminding him that he came back unconscious and plasters a sly smile on her lips as she tells him to admit it. Our hero then stares up and is met with the wonderful sight of his sister and Belinda smiling, and for a moment, all of his pain seems to wash away. He acknowledges that everyone is just as he remembers them and wonders why his past self wasted so much time on useless things. Back then, he had rejected Alina's offer to go to the festival together, using how upset he was after the raid as an excuse. Unfortunately, that was also the last time he saw her alive. Her body was later found shredded to pieces alongside those of her bodyguards. Recalling this event sends shivers round our hero's body, so he grips his shirt and laments about not being there with her. Just then, they hear a knock on the door, with someone asking if they can head in. The three of them immediately turn their attention to the door, only for two of Alina's bodyguards named Philip and Jamal to make their way in. Jamal acknowledges that they've been searching for her, so the youngster asks what happened, adding that she explicitly told them to wait outside. In turn, the bodyguard apologizes, and then points out that the servants want her to oversee their work on the festival supplies. This makes our hero wonder aloud about why they would ask his sister, only for Belinda to tell him that he has no idea because he spends his days lazing around. She then asks why there would be a shortage of workers in Perdium so bad that Alina would have to be put to work. Her sarcastic tone registers with Ghislaine, and only then does the shortage of workers become clear to him. His sister waves him goodbye at this point, announcing that she's heading out and telling him to take care of himself. He realizes that he didn't know any of this because he didn't care in the past, and for that reason, he offers to help Alina out. The young girl stops in her tracks and slowly turns around in surprise. Even Belinda is taken aback when she discovers that our hero volunteered to help, and his sister brings back the issue of him getting hit in the head. In turn, our MC quietly accepts his fate. Later on, they head out to the festival grounds where multiple servants are busy working on it. The servants get distracted by our hero's yelling, but all he says is that he wants to help. Alina, on the other hand, tries to get him to leave, pointing out that people will be too scared to work with him around. As she continues to push him, he asks if this is how she treats people who want to help, only for her to tell him that he could help by staying out of their way and out of trouble. This isn't possible because all our hero can think about is how her body was found near the slums, far away from festival grounds. He speculates that someone must have called her out to the slums or forcibly moved her there, and to prevent that from happening, he needs to know the ins and outs of the castle. Amidst his struggle with his sister, Ghislaine catches a glimpse of a knight calling out to him. The face of this man seems so familiar, and our hero instantly recognizes him as Old Man Fergus. The knight dabs as much sweat from his features as he can and expresses his joy over our hero being alright. He then grabs him by the shoulders and proclaims that he came running the moment he heard about his run-in with the orcs. In turn, our MC would like everyone to stop bringing up the matter. Alina sees this as a chance to get rid of her brother, so she tells Old Man Fergus that he has been acting weird and asks him to take our hero back to his room. The knight instantly agrees, leaving our hero to acknowledge that his sister has gotten in his way once again. Having no choice, he promises himself that he'll just get to know the castle better during the week. With this, he asks the knight about the abandoned training field in the castle and asks that he bring him there. In turn, Fergus wonders why our hero is asking about the training field, only for Ghislaine to plainly state that he wants to train. This comes as a surprise to the old knight, but he leads our hero to the training ground either way. Upon arrival, our boy is taken aback by how good it looks and even admits that it's in a much better condition than he expected. He thinks to himself that it's a perfectly suitable location for his training, seeing as he never saw anything like it during his time as a mercenary. It's at this point that Old Man Fergus reveals that they kept it maintained in case wished to make use of the facilities, adding that he's certain that our hero is just going through a phase. Ghislaine then recalls that the knight fervently cleaned the training room in his past life. He goes on to tap the old man's shoulder as he announces that he plans to live a long life, mostly because dying feels like crap. The knight begs his pardon, and mentions how the hero sounds like he has already experienced life and death. In response, our MC commends him for being sharp and reveals that he actually did die, but was resurrected. The smile on his face doesn't help matters, so Old Man Fergus begs him to stop with the tomfoolery. After this, Ghislaine relieves him of his duties, telling him that he's about to start training. In turn, the knight bows and announces that he'll be just outside. Glancing back at the old man, our hero realizes that he always treated everyone around him like they were his enemies, when in truth, he was just short-sighted. With both hands in his pockets, he reiterates that he has only a week to the festival, and takes a short trip down memory lane. Back then, they had found out that Alina's killer was a lord from the neighboring territory, and thanks to that, a war broke out. Perdium got caught in this war and it led to their downfall. Basically, the fall of their household began with Alina's death, so our hero resolves to set things straight from the festival. To start with, he intertwines his legs as he tells himself that he needs to get a better physique, but it's difficult to forget that he doesn't have much time. He only gains solace in the fact that he should be able to gather mana, and proceeds to inhale through his mouth in a bid to center himself. You see, mana is a supernatural resource that allows humans to break through their limits. It's widespread that noticing and taking in the mana is the hardest part, but our hero is able to do that, even on a chaotic battlefield. At this point, he acts that he has to connect all the mana floating in the air and bundle it up as though he's spinning a spool. Luckily, creating a mana core is a piece of cake for someone like Ghislaine who has experienced tens of thousands of battles. With this, he takes another deep breath, thinking to himself that he couldn't have become one of the continent's top 7 just by creating a mana core alone. In truth, he had help from a half-burned magic book he picked up, alongside his natural mana core, possessed by every human. With a combination of both, our hero created a second core, and with a little more pushing, he creates a third, and interconnects all 3 in a bid to create an explosive force. Unfortunately, too much energy courses through his body, and blood escapes from his nose and mouth as a result. He coughs vehemently and admits that his limit is 3 cores, even though he was able to reach 5 in his past life. Apparently, this method allows the user to create an explosive force in a short time, but it also uses up an extremely large amount of mana. Ghislaine coughs up some more blood at this point, and recalls that his lack of sufficient mana was the reason he lost to Aidan in his past life. It turns out that Aidan had brought an entire night order against our hero when he had run out of mana, knowing full well that they would have lost if it was a fair fight. Anyway, our boy wipes the blood from his nose as he realizes that his multiple core technique is inherently unstable, but he's also satisfied with the amount of progress he has made, seeing as he now has a more youthful body and a lot of time. He gets back on his feet and resolves that he'll get Aidan's head this time. As for the bastards standing behind House Delphian, and the ones who helped destroy Perdium, Ghislaine promises to destroy them all. The week goes by in a flash, and the night of the festival arrives. Our hero fastens his holster to his hip and adjusts his blade as he keeps his promise to show up at the celebration. Alina is beyond surprised that he actually came, so much so that she takes a moment before asking him what happened. In turn, our hero claims that he should show up at festivals every once in a while, seeing as he's a Perdium. His little sister then reiterates that he's been acting weird lately, adding that she heard about how he has been doing nothing but training all week. Ghislaine doesn't see the problem with the next in line of a knight family doing some training, but his sister points out that he never used to care about things like that. She goes as far as reminding him of the time he said their father was annoying, and even wished that he would replace him as the lord already. This practically knocks the wind out of our hero, only for his sister to quip that she likes the way things are at the moment. She then smiles quaintly as she acknowledges that her brother as she knew him is back. All our MC can do is watch her leave, but over the past week, he realized that his change in actions has changed the way people receive him. To top things off, the future also seems to be changing. While he continues to tail his sister, Belinda instructs Jamal and Philip to figure out a way to make sure that our hero doesn't create any trouble, especially with so many visitors around. In turn, both bodyguards quip that they understand and ask her to trust them. Meanwhile, Ghislaine is busy thinking about the way his actions can affect the future. You see, the general flow of things might be the same, but it's pretty difficult for him to gauge the effects of his action on small events. For this reason, he resolves to respond to each situation effectively by making good use of the information from the future. He then taps the small pouch on his hip as he quips that his preparations are complete. After this, he and Alina take a tour of the festival, stopping for some bread and then running around for the fun of it. Later on, the young girl admits how much fun she had, and sits on some stairs to lament about how boring the festival becomes every year. Apparently, she feels like it's always the same events and is now wondering if there's anything new this year. Our hero says nothing in response, seeing as all he can think about is how nothing has happened even though the festival is almost over. He welcomes the possibility that it's because he's with Alina this time, only for one of the guards to ask if she wants to check out other areas too. Ghislaine instantly becomes cautious, so he watches intently as Jamal claims that one of his friends told him about new events taking place elsewhere. This piques Alina's interest, and after trying to confirm that they're being serious, she takes the hands of both her bodyguards, quipping that they better have fun. Our hero doesn't take his eyes off of them for 1 second, and it dawns on him that these two bodyguards were indeed the traitors of House Perdium. Philip and Jamal were not only Alina's bodyguards, but also the most trusted knights during the feud. This was because they had protected the girl ever since she was a child. According to records, they were both killed in the process of protecting, but our hero can tell that all or it was false. It's now obvious that these two are the traitors of Perdium. After walking for a while, they arrive at the slums where Jamal declares that they've arrived. An excited Alina takes a look around, but the only thing she hears is the sound of the wind. Her excitement drains immediately as she points out that there's nothing at their present location. She then takes another look around before asking Jamal if he's certain about a performance taking place in such a dirty environment. In turn, the guard quips that they just haven't started yet. He tries to convince her that more people will show up soon, but Alina doesn't believe a word he's saying. She then asks the knight if he actually thinks anyone will show up for a performance in such a dirty place. Meanwhile, Ghislaine is busy scoping the area, and soon enough, he realizes something fishy about it. At first look, the area seems like a normal deserted one, but upon closer inspection, one can see that the placement of boxes along the escape route was no mistake. Just as he concludes that everything was set up in advance, Alina pulls him by his arm and asks that they leave immediately. As she continues to pull him along, Jamal tries to get her to stay for the show since they're already at the venue, but the girl turns down his offer, adding that she's not going to stay for a show in such a place. On the other hand, our hero tries to wiggle himself free and asks his sister if she works out. The moment he wonders how she's so strong, Alina goes on to shoot him a questioning look that shuts him back up. Just then, she bumps into Philip, who ominously insists that they wait a little longer. In turn, the young'un stares up at him in fear and points out that they're acting weird. Still holding her brother tightly, she asks the knights what their problem is. Soon enough, Jamal quips that he didn't mean to upset her, only for him to flash a devious smile as he announces that a reasonable request came in. Alina is not done mulling over what he said when some strangers join them in the deserted street. 3 of them arrive, with 2 cloaked from head to toe in black, and their boss in a gray coat and hat to match. He's none other than Frank, no last name, and he commends the bodyguards for pulling off a flawless job. Jamal approaches him after this statement, confirming that he does good work, and announcing that they brought the young lady as promised. He would like them to end the deal soon, but Frank notices Ghislaine at this point, and asks if he's the first son of the Perdium house. Apparently, he wasn't part of the deal, but if looks could kill, the one our hero is currently giving Frank would have him in a coffin already. On the other hand, Jamal smirks as he proclaims that he added our boy for free, seeing as he followed them to the alley, not knowing that it would double as his graveyard. Our hero finally speaks up, telling Jamal that he sold them out, and asking him if he really thinks he can get away with it. In response, the crooked knight scoffs and tells him to start worrying about himself, adding that all they have to do is run away to a far place after the betrayal. It turns out that both bodyguards were getting sick and tired of the impoverished land that is the Perdium estate, and they only view it as a land tormented by barbarians. Jamal laughs once again, throwing his hands in the air as he confirms that there are others leaving Perdium besides them. He had barely finished his question before Ghislaine slashed him diagonally across the chest. He does this so fast that it takes a few seconds for the slain knight to cough up blood, leaving Philip, his sister, and even Frank shocked to their boots. Our hero then stands over Jamal's severed body as he points out that those who left never sold them out. After this, he glares daggers in Philip's direction, and the knight grabs Alina in a frenzy as he blames his colleague for losing to an amateur. Unfortunately, he also gets what's coming to him, and that's a literal blade to the forehead. His last word was impossible before he fell to a disgraceful death. Alina is quick to run to her brother's side once again, leaving the 2 assassins that escorted Frank to confirm if Ghislaine is the same son of Perdium they heard about. Word on the street was that he never had any real combat experience or even fine dental training. But what they're witnessing is contrary to that news. Frank then tells them that he's certain that the hero is the son of Perdium, thinking to himself that our MC managed to take out 2 guards despite being caught off guard. The scary part is that he did this with attacks that required the use of mana. At this point, Alina is beyond scared. She's now trembling as she asks her brother to explain what's going on. Short for words, our hero simply karate chops his sister's neck, temporarily cutting off the blood supply to her brain. This sends her fainting, and he lays her gently on the ground for a little timeout. Meanwhile, Frank thanks him for doing most of the work for them and approaches our hero as he points out that he's much more different from what he heard. Apparently, they were planning on taking out both bodyguards anyway. The boss goes on to light his tobacco pipe as he wonders if our hero has been hiding his true skills all this time. But Ghislaine only retrieves his blade from Philip's head and asks why that should matter. He then glances back at his opponents and keeps in mind that they're 3 in number. He also notices that the other 2 assassins are nothing to write home about. But Frank exudes mana on a different level entirely. This makes our MC resolve to end things quickly. He coats himself with a sheath of mana, creates a bunch of almost invisible threads with it, and goes on to ask the boss about the person behind this attack. Of course, Frank doesn't give an answer, and this is because he considers Ghislaine to already be a dead man. The thing is, our hero already expected such a response, so he plans to make his opponent want to spill his guts soon enough. One of the assassins asks their boss if they should sever our MC's head, but Frank gives a negative response, adding that they should capture him and break every bone in his body so he'll have no choice but to go mad. An arrogant smirk then creeps onto his lips as he declares that our hero has to writhe in pain for the true shape to reveal itself. Both cloaked men signal that they understand and get to attacking immediately. Of course, Ghislaine has been ready for something like this, so he throws a candlestick at the first one. The assassin slows down because he thinks it's a firecracker, and in that moment of hesitation, our boy slashed through the candlestick and into the head of his opponent. That's 1 down, 2 to go. The other cloaked assassin announces that our boy used a shallow trick and attacks him out of annoyance. Luckily, Ghislaine is quick enough to block an attack to his back by throwing his blade over his head. In one swift motion, he locks down his opponent's blade with his free hand and uses brute force to unhand it from him. This creates a slight opening, but it's just enough for our boy to decapitate the assassin with. Unfortunately, Frank doesn't give him any breathing space, but thanks to his sixth sense, he quickly catches onto the incoming attack and uses his opponent's blade to block it from behind. The boss is both surprised and impressed that Ghislaine managed to block his attack from such a position, seeing as it was also the perfect sneak attack. His thoughts get rudely interrupted when our hero decides to strike back, giving the assassin no choice but to jump. The moment Frank touches the ground, our boy uses mana to slash his neck, cutting his tobacco pipe for added stress. Somehow, this does nothing to the assassin, and he just goes on attacking our hero. Of course, Ghislaine sees his next strike coming from above, so he uses both blades in his possession to block it. This is when the boss finally speaks again, admitting how surprised he was by the slash to the neck, and asks that if he was lacking in mana he would be beheaded already. While out here struggles to keep his opponent's blade at bay, he wonders how the assassin survived a strike to the neck. This makes him welcome the possibility that he might have concentrated mana around his neck to reduce the damage. At this point, Frank adds his second hand to the hilt of his sword, proclaiming that he has no clue how our hero learned such swordsmanship at such an early age. All he's certain of is that Ghislaine will die by his hand. As a show of strength, Frank increases his mana output and mocks our hero by telling him that there's no way he can win with such feeble mana. He follows up by laughing maniacally and telling him that he'll die by his hand. At that moment, the assassin is thrown off his game by a smiling Ghislaine, not knowing that he has a truck up his sleeve. You see, our hero had successfully gotten his opponent to apply so much force in an attempt to cut him down, so he suddenly let go of both his blades, pushing Frank to the side. He then digs the blades into the ground and uses them as a pivot to deliver a dilapidating kick to his opponent's face. This kick is so powerful that it shatters his glasses and sends him sliding a few ways to the side. The assassin then adjusts his hat as that arrogant grin revisits his features, and goes on about how he told our hero that his attacks won't work because they lack enough mana. Well, he quickly changes his mind, seeing as he begins to cough up blood mere seconds later. It gets so bad that he ends up on his knees, trembling and wondering why the power of Ghislaine's attack was suddenly so different. To him, there should be no way the boy would be able to pierce through his mana enhancement with such a skill level. While the assassin is still down, our hero reveals that he never expected there to be a true culprit behind Alina's death, and goes on to release all 3 mana cores as he declares that Frank is the one to blame. For this reason, he yells at him to prepare himself and goes on to unleash the true power of his 3rd core. All his opponent can do is baffle at how he managed to increase his mana so much, but he can't waste that much time thinking, seeing as Ghislaine practically blinks out of position. This alerts Frank to how fast he is, and it takes everything the assassin has to block the multiple attacks our hero is now dealing him from every angle. With 2 blades, I might add. The pace of things begin to pick up, leaving Frank to grit his teeth as he tries to keep up. After gathering enough momentum, our boy strikes his opponent square in the center, leaving him to block like his life depends on it. Of course, the adverse effects begin to show on Frank's body, and he admits to himself that his hands are going numb just from blocking the attacks. Unfortunately, his blade isn't as sturdy as he is, so it begins to crack under the pressure. You see, no matter how much mana one draws, it usually has a limited effect, but Frank had never heard of a method that increases mana as explosively as Ghislaine's. Now overwhelmed, he can only view our hero like a different person, like a beast that has finally caught up with the prey of its dreams. Our MC's next strike makes waste of Frank's blade, shatters it, and cuts into the poor assassin's chest, all in one swift movement. Even as his blood sprays every which way, Ghislaine is not satisfied. This makes him aim for Frank's stomach and mercilessly sink his sword into it. The assassin coughs up more blood, but our hero is ruthless enough to shut him up with a punch beneath his chin, thus pushing him to a wall nearby. Still applying pressure on his neck, our boy tells Frank that they should finish the conversation they started earlier. He then asks the assassin to reveal the identity of his employer, but he has no ex of going down so easily. With this, he unveils a hidden dagger from the sleeve of his coat, keeping in mind that he will at least take Alina with him. Frank tries to throw the dagger at the sleeping princess, but his hand seems stuck in place. It's at this moment he realizes that our hero had his hand bound with mana threads. Ghislaine then tells him that they should strike a deal, one where the assassin doesn't try anything useless and answers the questions he's asked. In turn, our hero promises to sheath his sword. Unfortunately, Frank is more preoccupied with thoughts of how our MC created mana threads capable of stopping his movements. Hearing no response, the hero continues speaking. He points out that someone of Frank's caliber will definitely know how to patch up himself, and adds that none of that will matter if he destroyed his mana. This is enough to draw the assassin's attention, and when he looks down, our hero is busy concentrating mana around his blade. He then locates said core and applies pressure, causing Frank to scream like a child seeing a ghost for the first time. He soon realizes that his mana is scattering, and this is courtesy of the cracks appearing on his core. This makes him scream at Ghislaine, asking him if he's crazy and pointing out that one wrong move could cause a mana backflow that would result in an explosion big enough to take out the entire street. He goes on to ask our hero if he's planning to self-destruct, only to be told that only the unskilled fear for such a thing. Our MC looks him in the eyes and declares that he can manage the explosion, and it becomes clear that he's not bluffing. Frank can even see it in his eyes that he will die, and for this reason, he spills his guts, screaming as he reveals that Count Desmond was behind the scheme. Apparently, the Count needed it as a pretext to begin a war against the Perdium and Degard families alike. Furrowing his brows, our hero acknowledges Desmond as the culprit. In his previous life, such underground work was left to families allied with the ducal house, so he gets pissed off over Duke Delphine carrying out such dirty work behind the scenes. Back to Frank. Our hero applies more pressure on his neck as he confirms if the mission was the reason why the assassin wanted to kill his sister. The moment he says yes, Ghislaine digs his blade deeper into Frank's gut, causing him to cough up more blood and accuse our hero of doing the opposite of what he promised. In turn, our boy cracks a smile and points out that the assassin has no right to be scared of death when he has killed so many. For some twisted reason, Frank bursts out laughing and then announces that nothing will change even if he's killed. It turns out that he has already taken care of the Degard part of the scheme, so he taps our hero's forehead with his and asks if he thinks anyone will listen to a punk like him. He goes on to declare that Pedium will perish in the war, but before he's done talking, Ghislaine covers his mouth with his palm and offers up some free information. He reveals how he was reborn after dying and makes it clear that things will be different. With this, he shatters Frank's core and manages it just like he promised. Unfortunately, the assassin screams in anguish until his last breath. It's time for festival fireworks, and as the skies light up above, our hero stares at the assassin's bloodied corpse below. He takes heavy breaths as the other corpses litter the area, and quickly glances back to confirm his sister's well-being. Luckily, she's still fast asleep, so he throws his opponent's blade aside, looks up to the skies and exhales loudly. It's at this point that his body begins to fail him, pushing him on all fours as he coughs up some blood of his own. Ghislaine quickly wiped his mouth clean afterwards, cursing under his breath as he recalls that he never had any problems exploding 3 sires back when he was the mercenary king. Despite his now blurring vision, our hero refuses to let things end like this. He struggles his way into the warehouse nearby where he finds 2 corpses wrapped in white cloth. Breathing heavily, he approaches them and recalls that another corpse was also found in his past life, and according to Frank, it was a hit on the Degard family. A closer look at the corpse then reveals that he's the son of Duke Degard. Ghislaine squats to examine the scene and realizes that X was killed alongside his escort. This was how they were silenced and framed as Alina's killers. The moment such a thing is revealed, it will definitely lead to a war that our heroes certainly don't want. For this reason, he decides to erase the evidence and pulls out a firecracker to aid his mission. He sets the entire warehouse ablaze, leaving both bodies to burn and promising himself that he won't let things go the way Count Desmond intends. After this, he carries his sister on his back and makes his way back to the estate. Little does he know that someone has been spying on him from a nearby tree. The spy presents himself to the ducal underground, a group of high-ranking men in a round table shrouded in darkness. He declares the mission was a failure and explains how they sent guard knights as well as Frank, only to get yelled at for not being able to take care of one little girl. They even ask him if he let his guard down because he thought it would be easy work, and he stutters in a bid to respond. He finally reveals that it was Ghislaine's doing, but the dukes refuse to believe him, with one of them referring to our hero as the useless bastard of the north. One of the bigger dukes then makes it clear that our boy is X and asks if the spy is really going to use such a person as an excuse. In turn, the spy informs the underground that our hero was completely different from the information and rumors about him, seeing as they were told he was useless, but in fact, he took out every one of their assassins in one skilled way or the other. It was as if he was a different person. In an attempt to save his hide, the spy quickly reminds the Cabal that they've already taken care of Degard, adding that it will not be difficult to start a territorial war. With this, he pleads for a second chance to do right by them. Almost immediately, the dukes begin to yell at him, with one of them telling him to shut his mouth, seeing as he couldn't even gather appropriate information on our hero. Another one asks if he recognizes how much of a setback his failure has caused. They remind him that he couldn't even finish one easy mission, and wonder why he thinks they'll give him a second chance. At this point, they all chorus that the spy should be eliminated, and he buries his head between his legs in response. Count Desmond, the leader of the underground, speaks up, and the first thing he does is point out how noisy the others are being. From his throne, he asks the spy about the kind of chance he seeks, and the hired hand, now fired up, promises to rid this world of Ghislaine Perdium. The Count asks how he plans to do that, so the spy explains that he'll make a duel happen naturally. Apparently, he already has someone in mind, and when the Dukes ask him who that is, he reveals his name to be Cain Loges, a famous strength-based swordsman. Despite Cain's young age, he happens to be the epitome of strength, so the spy confidently assures the Cabal that there's no one in the north who can match his strength. In addition, he informs them that Cain is Ghislaine's cousin, so having them meet each other will not seem forced. They all take a moment to mull it over, and finally, Count Desmond gives the go-ahead, making it clear that should the spy fail, there will be no next time. Back at the Perdium Castle's training ground, Old Man Fergus pays our hero a visit, begging his pardon as he informs him that it's almost mealtime. Just then, Ghislaine sends his mana thread all the way to the sword by Fergus's right hand and pulls it to himself in one swift movement. While the old knight stays baffled, R catches his sword by the hilt and gives it a swing for good measure. He then realizes that the old knight has been watching him the whole time, so he calls out to him. In turn, Fergus bows his head and apologizes for interrupting his boss's training. Still curious, the knight asks how he did the thing with the sword, so our hero just lifts his blade with a mana thread and explains that it's simply using mana like a string. In his past life, he used to use it all the time, but in this life, in which he lacks mana, he needs to implode his core in order to use the threads like he did before. As a backyard fix, our hero sought to make only one thread, thus needing less mana to pull it off. Old Man Fergus admits that he has never seen something like this, despite all the years he spent training his mana. In his heart, he acknowledges that our hero neither used mana nor trained until a short while ago, and this makes him question how he's already able to manipulate mana this well. Our boy then interrupts his thoughts as he asks if the knight wanted anything from him. In turn, X quips that he wanted to tell him something, so Ghislaine asks him what that is. The old man proceeds to bow his head once again and thanks our boy for protecting Alina. This comes as a surprise to our hero, and he instantly points out that he should have been protecting her all this while. Afterwards, they both head out for some food. The days go by at the Perdium estate and the festival was paused because a guard knight tried to traffic Lady Alina. Present day, and the young lady seems mad as hell that everyone thinks she's lying when she claims that her big brother saved her. She would very much like it if he could go say something to them. But our hero brushes the issue aside, telling his sister that they wouldn't believe it anyway. Meanwhile, Belinda is so pissed off at Jamal and Philip that she visibly trembles with indignation. She then announces that she always knew there was something messed up about the two of them, and the young lady just calls her name tiredly. Taking in the sight, our hero acknowledges that his sister lived and that he was able to stop the war. He's also sure that the Cabal will not give up. It becomes obvious that Ghislaine alone cannot stop these people, so he resolves to grow a military force. Just then, a maid walks in with a food tray and begs the pardon of everyone inside the room. She then sets our hero's food before him while he's busy thinking about getting more into politics in order to grow his military force. He grabs a fork to feast on his meal, only to find a small piece of biscuit on his plate. Surprised, he asks Belinda why they're getting dessert first, but she bows her head dejectedly as she quips that times are hard. Right on cue, loud voices leak in through the castle windows, causing our hero to shield himself by reflex. Apparently, the city merchants want compensation for the damages incurred by the cancellation of the festival, and they think a protest is the way to get it. A good number of them gather by the castle gates and chant for their compensation in unison. The ones at the front yell that the Perdiums should come out, adding that they're swimming in money. Despite the guards' attempt to calm things down, these people continue to cause a ruckus. It gets so bad that our hero X his head out the window as he wonders what is going on. Belinda, who is well informed, then quips that she knew something like this would happen. She goes on to explain that their county is full of merchants who make a living off of the profits that the festival brings, adding that the profits from the year before were good. Unfortunately, their anger is justified because this year's festival was cancelled after just one day. Staring out the window, our hero asks himself if his county's situation is that bad. He then looks away as he realizes that the ruckus will only get more aggressive if he doesn't do anything about it. For this reason, he calls out to Old Man Fergus, asking him about what the soldiers are doing, and instructing him to send them out to calm down the people. In turn, the knight quaintly informs him that they don't have any soldiers. Ghislaine is confused about what he means, so the old man reveals that most of their soldiers have been dispatched to the Forest of Monsters post for reconstruction due to the orc raid. Our MC can only curse under his breath because of how true this is. You see, the Perdium County is almost always at war because of the barbarian to the north, and to the northwest lies the Forest of Monsters, from where various beasts can exit any time. Our boy is left to suck his teeth as it dawns on him that they neither have money or soldiers. After this, he literally pulls Belinda to a corner for a chat, and they both crouch as he confirms that she's the one who manages his money. He then tells her to use it to calm down the merchants, only for her to reveal that there's no money left for him either. After a moment, he wonders why that is, so the maid reminds him that the count cut off his allowance because he spent money like it was water. Unfortunately, Ghislaine realizes that he's as broke as they come, and proceeds to ask Belinda to lend him some. It turns out that she also doesn't have any, so our dejected hero makes his way to the window where he sits and wallows. Lost in thought, he tells himself that without the least amount of money, he can't do anything with his knowledge of the future. The need for wealth becomes apparent, and while he's racking his brain for different ways to earn some, a knight comes running. This knight is none other than Ricardo, and he screams our hero's name the moment he walks through the door. Ghislaine comes down from the window to ask why the knight is in such a hurry, only for Ricardo to drop to the ground in a bid to catch his breath. After a minuscule moment, he goes back to yelling, informing our hero that a young Master Kane wants to see him. Upon hearing this name, our hero's expression becomes one of bewilderment. Kane Loges, being impatient, goes about punching any knight he sees, starting with Commander Skaven, who he punches in the face until his blood leaks from his fist. To make things worse, he uses his immense strength to sink another punch into the commander's chest, sending the flying into the distance. It's at this point that our hero arrives at the scene and witnesses a battered Skaven as he struggles to speak. This instantly infuriates him, so he glares at his estranged giant of a cousin. In turn, Kane literally looks down on him and flashes an arrogant smile. The arrogant smile has come to stay, seeing as Kane keeps it pasted on his face as he says hello to his younger cousin. In turn, Ghislaine recognizes his face a few seconds after staring at it, and asks him to be the heir of the Loges County with whom they have an alliance with. Kane Loges happened to be his only friend back in the day, but somehow he was also an enemy. With Skaven being practically unconscious, the hunk of a man struts in our hero's direction. In turn, Ghislaine asks Ricardo to explain the events that led up now. The knight immediately breaks into a tale of how they responded to a report about a disturbance at the tavern, only to find out that Kane and his escort knight were the source of said disturbance. The Loges easily recognized them to be his cousin's people, so he asked if the rumor about our hero's newfound strength were true. Kane gulped down his beer while Commander Skaven went on to explain the details of the rumor to him, and afterwards, the giant practically grabbed Skaven by the face. He then threatened him, claiming that the commander had the guts to lie before the heir of Loges. With this, things spiraled into their current situation and a dejected Ricardo rounds up his tale. Kane wastes no time threatening this knight too, telling that he had better tell the truth if he is going to speak on the matter. Apparently, the Loges finds it difficult to believe Ghislaine, who never trains, took down an orc with his bare hands, and dealt with the traitorous escort knights by himself. He boldly declares that this was what Skaven explained, and also why he roughed him up for. He goes on to look down upon our hero, smirking, and he proclaimed that none of this would have happened if the commander didn't lie in the first place. Ghislaine gets more annoyed by the minute, so he glares at his cousin and is reminded that this was his typical behavior. He always treated our hero like a subordinate and never hesitated to make a mess every time he paid Perdium a visit. After he caused all that trouble, no one would utter a word in defiance, mostly because they all saw our hero as his subordinate too. No one dared to look down on Kane, unlike our boy, who was ridden with an inferiority complex. You see, his cousin's confidence and bold demeanor were praised as qualities befitting an heir, and this only brought more criticisms in our hero's direction. Remembering his pitiable past only brings a quaint smile to his lips, and of course, Kane notices it too. He then tells himself that the former Ghislaine would have charged at him upon the slightest provocation. A while ago, the Cabal spy paid Loges County a visit to make good on his promise to the Esteemed One. After hearing his offer, the heir to the county tried to confirm if he was serious about wanting him to kill his cousin. In response, the spy let him know that the Esteemed One would support the Loges family if he succeeded in such a task. Kane then informed him that taking out a punk like Ghislaine wouldn't be difficult, but pointed out that he was also an heir to his land. This raised the question of how he would eliminate him and remain politically correct. The hired hand went on about how they could lure our hero into a duel, making it appear as though an unfortunate incident occurred. In essence, they planned to make it look like a trivial dispute between heirs. To round things off, the spy offered to follow Kane disguised as his escort knight, so he can orchestrate the whole situation in a way that there would be no cause for concern. He immediately let the giant know that he was being presented with an uncommon opportunity, and after mulling it over for a few seconds, Kane began to bask in the opportunity to kill his own cousin. A smile then crept onto his face and he urged the spy to leave with him right away. Back to the present. He glances back at the hired hand and wonders if they want him to eliminate his cousin because something has changed about him. He brushes this aside and goes on to taunt Ghislaine by calling out to him and asking what he's doing. In turn, our hero shoots him a questioning look, leaving Kane to ask why he's standing still. He then announces that our hero should bring his prepared package since he's aware that he's in town. Confused, our MC asks what he means by prepared package, only to be told that they should liven things up in the tavern because the festival has been interrupted. He goes on to claim that he and our boy have always been in sync when it comes to matters like this, and glares at him as he asks if he's wrong. Still confused, Ghislaine remains quiet with both hands dug into his pockets, and mere moments later he realizes what his nasty cousin is actually referring to. It turns out that Kane always made our hero prepare alcohol and ladies for him every time he was in town. He had granted this request because he was scared of getting beaten up. But things have changed now. Our boy also realizes that his cousin was the reason why he wasted all of his precious money and had to be cut off by his father for spending too much. His eyes shoot open as an epiphany comes upon him. He then looks at Kane as his savior, as the answer to all his money problems. At this point, the giant shouts our hero's name, thus snapping him out of his mini-trance. Unfortunately, he did this because he wants our MC to go about preparing his women and alcohol immediately. Just as he tries to taunt Ghislaine, he claps back that he'll get to the preparations if his cousin repays the debt he owes. He draws closer to Kane and returns the favor of looking down on him as he asks him for this payment. This surprises the spy, and even his cousin, so much so that the hunk asks what he's paying for. In turn, our hero informs him that he has been paying for all his shenanigans with his personal money and adds that he would like to be reimbursed. For charity's sake, he estimates the debt to be 1,000 gold coins plus interest. His cousin grows angry immediately, thus questioning our hero's estimate, and announcing that everything he lavished shouldn't be up to 100 gold, not to mention the fact that he was even doing all of it as thanks for being his friend. Kane calls this a friendship fee, but our MC could care less about such stupid friendship. He makes it clear by pointing out that the giant has used him as a doormat for the longest time. For this reason, he borrows Kane's arrogant smile and tells him to either pay back what he owes or get beaten beyond recognition, adding that he needs a lot of money at the moment. The giant begins to seethe while everyone else is surprised by our hero's proclamation. Ricardo is especially worried and can't help but wonder what is going through the mind of his young master. Infuriated, the hunk gets on his feet with heavy steps and tells our boy that he seems to have grown bold because he has been going easy on him. He leans forward to be on eye level with Ghislaine only to mock him about believing that he has gotten stronger because of the false rumors about him winning against a knight. He takes things further as he calls our hero a parasite that's leeching off his land, and adds that it's why everyone in the north can only see him as a scoundrel who spouts nonsense. Kane tightens his fist as he continues to taunt our hero and launches a punch the moment he tells him to get his act together. In turn, Ghislaine remains unfazed and uses very little movement to dodge the swing. Anxiety levels rise among Ricardo and the spy, seeing as they're both in the passenger's seat in this not-so-little tiff. The hunk tries for another punch, but our boy easily ducks and sinks his fist into Kane's liver just as quickly. Betrayed by his arrogance, Kane ends up coughing up blood. But rather than put up an expression of pain, his face is plastered with one of surprise. Ghislaine goes for another packed punch, but this time, his cousin is quick enough to block it with his palm, bringing back his arrogant smile while he's at it. Our hero goes on with his deadpan expression, only for the hunk to drop to his knees, screaming and faking intense pain. Of course, the spy, who had pre-planned all of this, rushes to his side as though the situation is indeed serious. This annoys our MC, so he tells his cousin to get up and stop whining, adding that he knows he blocked the last shot. The hired hand goes on to yell at Ghislaine, telling him to stand back and asking him, to the hearing of everyone present, what he thinks he's doing. As expected, the onlookers take a bite of his bait, with some of them concluding that our boy beat up his cousin, and others wanting to know what happened exactly. The young master glances around and instantly catches wind of his opponent's plan. A plan then comes to his lips as he watches Kane whisper to the hired hand. The hunk is busy asking if the spy liked his acting, and gets told that it was excellent. Apparently, the spy thinks he has set the stage perfectly to make everyone see the situation as Ghislaine's fault. He then tells the heir of Loges that this is enough to warrant a duel. With this, Kane adjusts his jacket, keeping in mind that it's pretty difficult to attain the backing of someone as powerful as the esteemed one. For this reason, he resolves to leave a lasting impression this time and sees this as the perfect opportunity to cut off the Perdium house because he views them as a falling power. He peels out a glove and raises it above his shoulder as he raises his voice. The heir goes on to ask his cousin where he got the audacity to attack him for simply wanting to verify the truth, adding that he tarnished the dignity of nobility with lies. He has barely finished challenging our hero to a duel when he gets slapped in the face by a brown glove. A quick glance reveals that our hero threw it, and he's now following up by challenging Kane Loges to a duel of his own. This catches the hunk by surprise and he can only watch as our boy proclaims that his cousin insulted him, a fellow heir, in front of the people of Perdium. In addition, he accuses Kane of assaulting his knight and tarnishing the image of nobility. Ricardo, who is busy tending to the commander, is forced to look up at this point, and catches a glimpse of his master asking the heir of Loges whether he's planning to deny the duel. Kane stays quiet initially, only to suddenly laugh at our hero in a low tone. He quips that he knew Ghislaine was stupid, but never knew he was stupid enough to dig his own grave. With this, he peels out his sword and accepts our MC's challenge, telling him not to regret his decision even if he dies in the process. Ghislaine Perdium had instructed Ricardo to gather any tourists left, and he did this with good reason. They instantly spread the news of the duel between Kane and our MC in a bid to distract the leftover tourists and angry protesters into spending their time and money. The match turns out to be a welcome substitute as people gather round, screaming at the tops of their lungs and placing bets on Kane to win. The merchants did their parts, offering promos to whoever stops by their shops, not to mention the bookie having a field day taking care of all the bets placed. While people practically throw money away, Kane digs his longsword into the platform, angry that Ghislaine turned a sacred duel into a marketing scheme. For this reason, he declares that he won't hesitate to kill our hero even if he surrenders. The Perdium heir is unfazed because he can tell that Kane has been after his life from the beginning, and the smirking between him and his so-called knight escort proves our boy's point even more. Pretending to be clueless, Ghislaine declares that it's high time they start the battle, seeing as enough spectators have gathered. Just then, the knight escort yells at him to wait, outstretching both arms as he announces that a proper bet can't be placed the way they're going about things. The arena goes quiet temporarily, with everyone wondering what the man meant by his statement. Given a chance to speak, the bookie reveals that not a single soul placed a bet on Ghislaine to win, and this earns him a glare from the heir of Perdium. People from the crowd begin to yell that the result of the match is obvious, and others add that our hero has no chance against his opponent. It gets so bad that they refer to anyone willing to bet on our boy as a dumb idiot. Of course, Kane takes this opportunity to taunt Ghislaine about being ignored by the same people he gathered. Right on cue, someone from the crowd suggests changing the contents of the bet, quipping that they should bet on how long our MC will last against Kane. Helped by Ricardo, a brutally bruised Scoven drops a bag of coins on the bookie's table and declares that he'll be betting on Ghislaine. Our hero has barely smiled when Alina comes with an even bigger bag of coins, announcing that she'll also bet on her brother. Everyone from Belinda to Ricardo and even Ghislaine is shocked by how much money she put on the line. The crowd questions her decision, but she ignores them as she asks the bookie if the money she put down is enough. At the same time, Belinda continues to remind the princess that she advised against the decision. The whole thing throws off Kane's escort knight, and Kane himself is mad about being delayed for no reason. Because of this, our hero yells at him to get ready, following up with a mocking tone as he announces that it'll be weird for him, who's the older cousin, to strike first. Kane doesn't see the point of this statement, but it doesn't stop our hero from grabbing the hilt of his blade and pulling it out of its sheath ever so majestically. He spins it around for showmanship and abruptly drops it to his side before telling his not-so-little cousin to attack first. The look in his eyes is as serious as can be, and he just watches as Kane stills himself. The Loge's heir squats to gather momentum, pointing out that it's a bit late for Ghislaine to act like the older cousin. For the second time, the start of the battle is announced and Kane pushes himself off the ground with all the momentum he had been gathering, lifting his sword and bringing it down on our hero with all his might. His eyes resemble those of a killer, and that singular strike gives Ghislaine a lot to handle. While he's still struggling to block it, the Loge's heir yells that our MC has stooped too low to even show his face. The block is successful, but our boy gets pushed back 2 steps due to its force. Without wasting time, Kane tries to stab him with his blade, but Ghislaine maneuvers his way around it and blocks the attack without even looking. Pissed off, his cousin tries to use brute force, kicking our boy as hard as he can. But once again, Ghislaine maneuvers his way to safety like a swan on still waters. Of course, the crowd continues to cheer on Kane, screaming that there's no way our hero can endure one attack from him. The Loge's heir has an arrogant smirk plastered on his face, and it annoys our MC to say the least. On the sidelines, Belinda is freaking out and asking Lady Alina to stop the match. Ricardo is just beside them, freaking out in equal proportions. Meanwhile, the Cabal's spy, devious as they come, concludes that it's too late for our boy, adding that anyone who chooses to clash blades with Kane has already been trapped. The way he sees it, the giant's opponents use up all of their energy on evasion because they discover that they have no openings to attack him. In turn, they tire out and leave an opening which Kane often uses to end their lives. This has always been the tactic of the Loge's heir, and even now, he showers Ghislaine with a barrage of attacks, swinging his blade over and over as our hero does everything he can to dodge. The giant admits that our boy is slippery and even adds that he has improved from the total weakling he once was. After this, he spins his sword and catches it by the blunt side of the blade. Holding it like a bat, he slams the hook of the hilt into Ghislaine's back and uses blunt force to fling him into the distance. Jaws open immediately, with almost everyone following a flying Ghislaine with their eyes. Ricardo screams for his master's sake, and the knight escort brings back his devious smile as he tells himself that Kane has won. Mid-air, our hero thinks up a plan, announcing that he wanted to go easy on his cousin. With this, he focuses some mana on his feet to stabilize himself and lands gracefully on the top wall of the Colosseum. Apparently, Kane crossed the line, and this is enough to push our hero over the edge. Blade in hand, he launches himself at his opponent, only to fly past him at incredible speed. Confused, Kane tries to follow our hero with his eyes, and watches as he regains his footing. The spy in their midst is also in awe of Ghislaine's mana control, and buckets of sweat drip from his face upon witnessing it. Moving on, our boy mocks the giant's swordsmanship and announces that Cain must have thought he was strong because his other opponents ran away scared after seeing a little of his strength. Ghislaine is out to prove that he's nothing like these opponents, so he looks Cain in the eyes and readies his blade to teach him a lesson. This only annoys the giant some more and pushes him to swing his weapon in our boy's direction. Before the sword can make its way down, Ghislaine kicks the hilt to avert it and then jumps on Cain's huge arm, using it as a pivot to jump into the air. On his way down, he slashes the giant's back, arm, and torso in one swift motion, proving how good of a swordsman he actually is. Cain tries to stab him point blank, thrusting his blade and screaming like a maniac. Our hero simply dodges it with a jump and traps the blade under his foot. Almost immediately, Ghislaine stands to his full height and slashes the corner of Cain's throat. Like an assassin, he quietly steps away to let the giant bleed out, and the crowd goes quiet before going wild. Screams emanate from every nook and cranny as they try to understand what our boy just pulled off. Some admit that he has improved a lot and many others complain about losing their bets. Alina wastes no time gloating about her brother's progress, and Commander Scoven just gives a nod of approval. As the spy watches, Cain realizes that our hero had only dished out shallow cuts even though he had a chance to make them deeper. He wonders if he did that on purpose and gets more furious as he thinks about Ghislaine achieving such a great level of swordsmanship. It gets worse. Still on his knees, our MC literally looks down on Cain and throws his blade away from boredom. He announces that the difference in their skill will not make for good entertainment, and the moment his sword slides to a halt, he promises to continue the duel barehanded. Of course, Cain takes this as a slap to the face and almost bursts from the resulting anger. None of this phases our hero. Instead, he declares that he wants to use the opportunity to educate his opponent. He then pulls up his sleeve to indicate that he plans to educate him with his knuckles. Cain has to say our hero's last statement back to him for lack of believing it, only for Ghislaine to double down on his point. You see, our boy believes that he's way too good at swordsmanship for it to be a fair fight, so he decides to take up bare-handed fighting, in which Cain is supposed to excel. Pulling up his sleeve, he bets another 2,000 gold on himself to win, making twice the initial bet his opponent placed. The onlookers can't believe their ears. Some wonder why the stakes are so high when this is supposed to be a duel. Others have worried expressions plastered on their faces. As for the Cabal's spy, his once surprised expression switches to one of dubiousness as he bows his head to mock our hero for daring to challenge Cain in a bare-knuckled fight. Apparently, he still thinks they have fortune on their side and that Ghislaine's insanity will bring about their victory. Anyway, the bookie announces the change in the terms of the duel and gives the onlookers a chance to place new bets. Of course, some stubborn people refuse to switch their bets from Cain, seeing as they think it's stupid to challenge such a giant in a battle of sheer strength. At the same time, a few villagers see the light and place new bets on young Master Ghislaine. Our hero balls his fists in preparation, staring down his still kneeling opponent, and in turn, Cain admits that Ghislaine's request for a bare-handed fight amuses him. He grips his blade even tighter, telling our boy to fight without a weapon if he pleases. He then throws aside his cape and declares that he'll go on to use his sword. All of his muscles tense with the pressure of battle as he towers over our boy. But none of this phases him, or Belinda, who screams from amidst the crowd that Ghislaine should also pick up his sword. It takes everything in Alina to stop her from slapping the maid senseless, but she manages to remain silent. In the arena, Cain thrusts his blade with such speed and force that he has to back it up with his other hand. Noticing this, our boy quips that he has to knock some sense into the giant. Of course, he dodges Cain's initial attack, leaving the sword to dig into the concrete of the arena. Ghislaine screeches to a halt, and abruptly jumps to his right side to create a false sense of direction for his opponent. Before Cain realizes what's going on, our hero sinks a punch into his inner thigh that brings his chin within reach. Without wasting time, Ghislaine readies a follow-up punch which he delivers in the form of an uppercut. The force is so intense that blood bursts out of Cain's mouth like a fire hydrant hit with a wrench. His head goes all the way back and causes him to stagger before he regains himself. Holding onto the ground for comfort, Cain groans in pain, wondering how a punk like our MC is capable of moving this way. Bored, Ghislaine buries one of his hands into his pocket and waits for his opponent to stabilize. It's obvious that the crowd is having a good time, as proven by their screams about the match being a spicy one. After this, our hero commands Cain to get back up, pointing out that the battle hasn't even started. Pissed off, the giant grits his teeth and launches himself off the ground, sword in hand. He swings it in our hero's direction, but it's much too predictable to land a hit, so Ghislaine slides further right to dodge it. Cain tries stabbing him next, but our boy easily evades this attack too, using the opportunity to grab both of his opponent's arms and manipulating his weight in such a way that he sends Cain falling to the side. The giant finds it hard to believe that Ghislaine is the same person who couldn't even look him in the eye, the same person who used to bow every time they came in contact. Sadly, things have changed drastically. Our hero doesn't let Cain fall all the way before landing a liver shot using his knee, causing an oomph to escape the giant's lips. Cain continues to tell himself that he has to kill our boy to secure the future of the Logis family, but Ghislaine doesn't even give him a chance to do that. After the liver shot, our boy sinks a hefty left hook and then a right hook and then a front shot, all to Kane's face. Sadly, it doesn't stop there. Punch after punch, hit after hit, Ghislaine continues to deliver a barrage of attacks on his opponent, making it seem like he's up against the neighborhood weakling. It becomes sad to watch as Kane struggles to breathe with his face swollen and battered beyond recognition. Still on his knees, our hero grabs the giant by his hair, lifts his head to look him in what's left of his eyes, and declares that he pitied Kane's father. Apparently, Count Logis helped the Perdium family until it was almost destroyed, and he did it all because he was friends with Ghislaine's father. Sadly, Kane, his son, had a much different idea. You see, a few years back, the Perdium estate was in a bind and Count Logis offered to send more support to them. Kane stood against it, pointing out that the Logis family was also falling on hard times despite his father being friends with the Count of Perdium. He questioned the man about his reasons for helping a land that's withering away, likening it to pouring water in a cracked bucket. An uncomfortable silence fell upon the room at that moment, seeing as the Count of Logis didn't give his son a response. In turn, Kane begged the man not to leave and asked him once again about his reason for helping Perdium. After a few seconds of silence, the Count revealed that it was just because they were friends. Back to the present. Kane's face seems to be swelling with every passing second, with blood dripping from the injuries to his nose and lips. Of course, Ghislaine doesn't give a damn. He goes for another punch to the face, leaving the giant to squeeze his eyes shut in anticipation of the hit, but the hit never came. Our hero simply announces that Kane must have been educated enough and the giant opens his eyes in surprise. He sees Ghislaine with an outstretched hand as he's being told to get on his feet. Sadly, he's much too demoralized to accept the beauty of our MC's offer. He just drops his head to the ground and admits his defeat, much to the surprise of all the onlookers and even his fake knight escort. With this, Ghislaine is declared the winner of the duel and the crowd goes wild with cheers of his victory. Amongst them lie those who lost unbelievable amounts of money, but it doesn't stop Alina and Commander Skaven from celebrating our hero's victory. On the other hand, the spy yells out Kane's name in a fury and covers the distance between them just so he can give the giant a piece of his mind. Yelling straight into his ear, the spy wonders why Kane would admit defeat after a little disadvantage like that. He goes on about how the giant soiled his trust, but the Logis heir simply looks away, telling his fake knight escort that he's done. The spy claps upon to his face, cursing and referring to Kane as a weak brat. Our MC interrupts him soon enough, a smug smile on his face as he declares that he has to do what he has to do. Confused, the spy turns to look at him, only for Ghislaine to announce to everyone that the man has volunteered to pay for meat and drinks for everyone present. The spy is beyond shocked, but the citizens go crazy about the announcement, raining praises on their young master for offering them such a feast. The spy tries to give Ghislaine grief about the announcement, claiming that he never offered to do such a thing. In turn, our boy shuts him up by grabbing his shoulder and then telling him that it's the price he has to pay for losing the duel. In addition, he makes it clear that the meat and drinks won't be deducted from the money for the bet. Ghislaine proceeds to push the spy to the ground, telling him with an intimidating voice to endeavor to pay up the 2,000 gold in addition to the 1,000 that was set originally. Our MC seems like a monster to the poor spy as he threatens to take his life if he doesn't pay up. After a short moment, the spy finally puts words together and stutters that he understands. Only at this moment does Ghislaine walk away victorious, one hand still in his pocket. The next day, our hero drags a chest to his room in the castle and drops the hefty box on the floor. He opens it up and the shine from his winnings pastes a baffled look on his face. He picks up some of the coins, admitting to himself that he could hire a small mercenary corps with the money, seeing as it's not a small amount. Sadly, he'd like to grow the funds, but these people don't have the patience to wait for him. For this reason, he keeps in mind the fact that he needs to work faster to achieve the kind of wealth he seeks. Abruptly, Alina and Belinda show up beside him, fake smiles pasted on their lips. Noticing this, Ghislaine scowls in their direction and asks about their reason for coming. Alina starts by asking where her brother plans on spending his earnings, and it makes our boy wonder if she wants some of it. In response, the princess claims that she's just curious, so Belinda cuts in, announcing that the answer to her question is obvious. Sadly, Ghislaine has no idea what she's talking about. The maid goes on to announce that a certain Lady Amelia will be having her birthday soon and that our hero must have put on a show to earn enough money to buy her a very expensive gift. She then smiles and claims that our boy is so transparent, but in truth, he's all the more confused. His sister thinks he pulled out such moves against Kane just to look good to his fiancée, but the sound of this strikes a chord in our hero. You see, Ghislaine had no idea that he had a fiancée, so his brows elevate as he asks his sister about it. Belinda cuts in to answer his question, telling him not to be shy and claiming that he doesn't have to be embarrassed because they read his mind. Alina then clarifies that they're referring to Amelia from Rayfold County, and our hero's eyes shoot open as memories of this lady flood in like folks at a Trump rally. A deadly spider comes to mind immediately when he hears Amelia Rayfold's name. He recalls her to be a noble among nobles, someone known to the public as kind and nurturing. She even managed to use this to gain the deep support of the people in her territory. Sadly, she's like an apple bitten into, showing only the side of her that's full and untouched. Amelia would later start a rebellion and become known as the Wicked Witch of the North, not to mention how she joined hands with the Delphines to drive the final nail into Perdium's coffin. Ghislaine remembers her to be a traitor. He keeps his composure, only asking his maid about the time of his father's arrival. Apparently, the Count won't be back for another week, and our hero bears in mind that it should be enough to pull off his plan. With this, he gets up to leave, announcing that he's going to pay Amelia a visit. Shocked, Belinda wonders why he's going when it's not Amelia's birthday yet, only for our boy to claim that he needs to get some money from her. In Rayfold County, Amelia notices a bruised youngster without shoes on, so she takes off her shoes and offers them to the child in the presence of so many onlookers. No one mentions the unnerving spider below her lips, seeing as they're all too distracted by her act of kindness. The child is moved too, and Amelia claims that she should be the one to walk barefooted, seeing as the land belongs to her. After this, she instructs her soldiers to provide food and shelter for the poor, and they slam the bottom of their spear against the ground so as they chorus a positive response. In no time, barrels and crates of supplies are handed out to as many people as possible, leaving the crowd nothing but grateful to their lady Amelia. She then walks home surrounded by her guards. Later on, in her garden, Bernaf, her trusty night escort, washes her feet, only looking up to tell her what a great job she did that day. Petting her cat, the princess goes on about how her father always demanded total obedience from his people, but points out that the lowly people will always follow someone who keeps them warm and well fed. Bernaf chips in at this point, mentioning how favorable her acts of kindness will be when the time comes for her to compete for the successor position. The princess falls quiet after this, staring down at her night escort for a while. Suddenly, she kicks him in the face and goes on to ask what happened in the duel against the finest sword of the north. With her foot still on his face, Bernaf explains that he only lost that battle to avoid drawing too much attention to his mistress. He gently removes her foot from his face and declares that the time hasn't come for her to show her claws. With this, he kisses her foot and humbly tells her that his blade is hers to command. The princess doesn't deny this. In fact, she points out how much she has invested just to train Bernaf and lifts his chin to look him in the eyes. After this, she makes it clear that he doesn't have the right to be weak. I know it's been a while since I last updated this series, but I really wanted to let this one marinate before I resumed it further. We now have a bunch of chapters to cover, and I assure you that each one is a banger. So count on me to deliver you all of these very fast, and I'll see you guys in the next upload. Until next time.